Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm your host, Vincent Franchini from Tumbler House, here with a waggish Charles Coulombe.
Waggish? Waggish? You mean like a sort of trickster figure?
Humorous in a playful, mischievous, or facetious manner.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the good ones. You should be willingly accepting of that.
I'll embrace my inner wag. It's all right. I can go with that. I'm all right. I'm good with that. I don't mind. But I have a lot to be wagging about.
What are you wagging about?
Well, several things. Firstly, while in real time, our friends are going to see us on Monday and Memorial Day, about which more momentarily. Tonight, Saturday night, May 29th, there are not one, not two, but three major observances. Firstly, it is the feast of Blessed Constantine XI, the last Byzantine emperor who died defending the city on this date in 1453, the city of Constantinople. He's a blessed, as was his mother, Helen Dragage. So they're another Constantine and Helen. The first Christian emperor, and certainly the founder of Constantinople, was Constantine, and his mother was Helen. And they're both saints in the Eastern Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches. The last was Constantine and his mother Helen, and they're both blesseds. That's kind of weird.
Wait, say that. So the first, I kind of lost you there.
The founder of Constantinople, the founder of the Christian Empire, really, was the Emperor Constantine I.
Yeah.
His mother was the Empress St. Helena.
Yeah.
Who founded the True Cross and so on.
Yeah.
May 21st was their feast day.
Yeah.
Saints Constantine and Helen. The last emperor in the East to rule Constantinople was Blessed Constantine the 11th.
They're both blessed? There's two blessed Constantines?
No, the other is a saint.
Oh, well, in the East, okay.
And his mother, Blessed Constantine the 11th's mother, was Blessed Helen Dragage, who was Helen.
That's so
first,
strange.
Isn't it? Isn't that bizarre?
I'm surprised that's not more well known.
You could say that about almost anything interesting.
No, I mean, but that's really the mirroring of the first and the last. That's unbelievable.
It's like the first Holy Roman Emperor was Blessed Charles I, and the last Austrian Emperor so far was Blessed Charles I.
Do you think there's something to that? Do you think there's a reason?
I don't know. I don't know, but it does make you scratch your head.
Yeah.
Even more than reading a Stephen King novel.
In a good way or bad way for Stephen King?
Either way. Either way.
Okay.
Just, there's some things in life that are obviously good, some that are bad. Others are just, I don't get it. I think I told you about the memorable Christmas Eve when many, many years ago when Kirk Mulhern had come by my house. And we had a very pleasant evening. And then we were going to, he was going to go, right? Late at night, Christmas Day now, he's about to leave. We step out on my front porch, and this huge white owl. It was gigantic. I'd never seen one like it around before or since. It flew straight toward us and swerved away at the last minute. And, we all looked, we looked at each other, he and I, and it's like heavy omen, but what does it mean?
You have another story. I actually like the other Kirk story more.
Which one?
His guardian angel.
Oh. Well, yes. What happened there, ladies and gentlemen, our friend Kirk was in his day was something of a beverage master, as were we all. This is many decades ago. Well, it so happened that he and another friend of ours had been at the John Bull imbibing, the late lamented John Bull, imbibing heavily, and then they drove off. Well, they're pulled over by a cop. So Kirk is busy flunking the walking exam, while Matt is saying his rosary very, very furiously in the passenger seat, when suddenly this lowrider pulls up and yells at the cop, "Hey, pig, get a life!" and drives off. And so the cop closes up Kirk's wallet, hands it back and says, "Thank you very much, sir. Have a pleasant day. Drive safely." Hops in his car and takes off after the lowrider. So I told Kirk when I heard all this, I said, "Well, there's good news and bad news." And he said, "Well, what's the good news?" I said, "Your guardian angel was really working overtime for you." He said, "What's the bad news?" "Kirk, your guardian angel's a lowrider." If you thought it was Clarence from It's a Wonderful Life, I'm afraid you're much mistaken. But no, those are fun times.
Yeah.
So you've got that going on. You have a second important day today. May 29th is also called Restoration Day, or Oak Apple Day, because this was the day the foul regime of Oliver Cromwell ended and King Charles II came back into his kingdoms. And the three kingdoms were free until 1688 of the filth and scum that had ruled them before and would rule them again. Is a third important thing today, on the 29th. Now, you see, at the moment, I am wearing I don't know if you can see it, my Royal Stuart Society tie, my King Charles the Martyr, Society of King Charles the Martyr pin, to honor Restoration Day. But this other day requires honoring all on its own. Today, ladies and gentlemen, is a very special day in the calendar. So I'll put on another lapel pin under King Charles the Martyr to honor it.
I'm nervous.
What are you nervous about? I'm helping. There we go. You see, ladies and gentlemen, today is the International Day of the UN Peacekeepers. The boys in the blue helmets. Yes, who go all over the world to really run down in annoying places to make war for peace.
I don't think I know anyone with as big of a fetish for these UN type things as you.
What are you talking about? The United Nations.
No one cares about the United Nations. It's just meaningless. I mean, they don't do anything. Yeah, I do hear myself.
All right, let me explain a few things. 2 generations of thoughtful people, have put their hopes and dreams for a better world in the United Nations organization. Among these have been every one of our popes going back to Pius XII. And if that weren't enough, you were cheesed out of the chance to trick or treat for UNICEF.
See, yeah, you make the big... Okay, legit question.
A legit question?
Here we go. No, I mean, honest question. Like, I'm not... I want to learn facts here.
Oh, those...
What was the UN's role in the downfall of communism?
None.
Well, why were you doing this? Why are you doing this then?
Why am I doing it? Do you remember when you were 6 years old And they misspelled your brother's name in the program for his recital.
Yes, you talked about this in the pre-show.
Well, it's the same thing here.
Just to confound and to confuse everyone and to elicit the same sort of look on everyone's faces collectively across the world.
Pretty much. But actually, all kidding aside, there are a couple of other things to bear in mind. One is that not unlike our own federal government, like it or not, the United Nations are in existence. My good friend Austin Ruse spends a lot of time working at the UN to attempt to keep them from putting really disgusting stuff into the agenda. And believe me, it's a never-ending fight because apart from most of the world's governments, to include our own, a lot of the member state governments really want to force everything from abortion to, transgender or whatever on everybody, especially third world countries whose views are not as advanced as those of the average American or Western European. That having been said, and bearing in mind that a lot of this stuff is pushed by various UN agencies, some of the UN agencies do some really decent things. UNESCO does some good work in terms of preserving the built heritage around the world, and what they call intangible heritage, which is different customs and ceremonies, folklore, and so forth. UN peacekeeping, when the interests of great powers are not involved, in the immortal words of former President Trump, hellhole overseas, so long as the great powers are not interested, UN peacekeeping very often does work. You never hear about it because it's amongst, non-white people no one cares about. But it was, for instance, the UN that brokered the settlement in Cambodia. The reason why there's a settled kingdom of Cambodia and not a never-ending guerrilla war between the Khmer Rouge and the Vietnamese is directly because of the United Nations. The Central African Republic is another hellhole that without the UN would be in really terrible shape. So, I mean, when they, as with the federal government, as with the New Deal, whatever they do that's good, I support. Whatever they do that's bad, I'm against.
Fair enough, Charles.
Trick-or-treating for UNICEF, I never did. And I wouldn't recommend it.
All right.
All right. But you see, I am wearing my UN lapel pin under King Charles the Martyr.
What about Memorial Day? Happy Memorial Day, everyone.
I haven't forgotten Memorial Day because it's going to lead me into a discovery.
Oh, do tell.
Tell about the discovery a little bit later. But Monday is indeed Memorial Day, the day in which we honor our beloved dead. It actually started way down south in the land of cotton after the Civil War. It was called Decoration Day. And what happened was that the Southern ladies began decorating Confederate graves and then made a terrible discovery.
What?
Well, they decorated all the Confederate graves. The Union graves had nothing. So they decided they would decorate them too. And that was the start of Memorial Day. People began decorating the graves on both sides. And that's why originally it was called Decoration Day. It became Memorial Day, I think, in the years before or following the First World War. And it is uniquely American. Veterans Day in November, which is Armistice Day, or Remembrance Day in the rest of the Anglosphere, that honors, in our country, all veterans who have ever served. But Memorial Day honors those who gave their lives for the country, or for the Confederate States of America. Although, interestingly enough, later on, the various formerly Confederate states developed their own Confederate Memorial Days, which are separate from the big one. The places to go. A lot of towns have Memorial Day celebrations, veterans parades, and so forth. Every VA cemetery in the system, and it's a nationwide system, will have observances. The biggest, of course, is at Arlington National Cemetery, which is the jewel in the crown. And then, of course, in your part of the world, renowned for Memorial Day ceremonial, the happy chain of forest lawn cemeteries.
What do they do?
Well, what they do is usually they'll have a reenactor unit, a Civil War reenactor unit, fire cannon, and there'll be an honor guard to fire over the dead, and they'll have various speakers, and some poems that we read and that kind of thing. Vaguely akin to a Protestant service. Well, not the cannon and the rifles, but they'll sing the Star Spangled Banner, of course, and My Country 'Tis of Thee, and things like that. I mean, those sorts of observances are vaguely based on 19th, early 20th century Protestant religious services, but they're sort of reconfigured to be purely patriotic.
Would you say it's better than nothing?
Yeah, better than nothing. I mean, there's nothing in it that's objectively against the faith. It's just sort of...
Yeah.
But when I was in LA, I'd always go to the observance at Forest Lawn because they did a good job of it. This year, thanks to anti-COVID, it is online streamable.
Yeah.
Now, the other holiday that is coming up and will have passed by the time, it won't have passed, but it'll be coming in this coming week, so you need to get ready. On the Sunday, the day before you'll see this, ladies and gentlemen, is Trinity Sunday. The following Thursday in the real world and Sunday in the United States is the great feast of Corpus Christi. So get ready for it. Now, touching on Memorial Day, a lot of people who've, especially now when we've had the forever wars going on, a lot of people have lost loved ones in wartime, and it's very upsetting. Over the past summer, now getting into a year ago, there was a lot of damage and rioting and horror. A lot of people are feeling very bad about the way things are in the country right now. I have a solution. Now, you've heard the phrase red-pilled, blue-pilled, there's even black-pilled, right?
Yes. Wait, what are you holding up? Oh. What, a little closer?
Well, it's concealed. It looks like an ordinary peanut.
Yeah.
It's not.
What is it?
It's a fuchsia pill.
Fuchsia?
Fuchsia. It's the actual color.
It doesn't look like fuchsia.
Well, it doesn't look like fuchsia because you haven't had the pill.
How do you know what it looks like when it's in your stomach?
Well, you look at other ones, and they used to look like this, like a peanut. But when you've had a fuchsia pill, they all look like fuchsia pills.
Okay, go on.
That's how you know. All right. So I'm going to take this. I've already had one earlier, and I know the effects. It wore off. But now, ladies and gentlemen, in front of your very eyes, I am going to be fuchsia-pilled. You ready? Good and good for you. Have a second. It's got to do its work. Yes. Yes, I'm fuchsia-pilled now. It's really very wonderful. It's all good, really, Vinnie. It's not like the blue pill where you have the illusion that everything's wonderful. I know everything's gone to hell in a handbasket, but I don't care. It's fine by me now. Everything's just great. It's kind of like when you get a migraine and you feel like your brain wants to pop out of your skull, and then they give you Demerol, and you just don't care. You know the pain's still there, but it doesn't bother you. That's what a fuchsia pill does. So, for instance, you could tell me the most terrible scandals in church and state, and I'd admit to you that they're important and probably downright evil, possibly even Satan's way of ruining souls by the millions. But you know, that really is their problem, isn't it? Not mine. I've been fuchsia-pilled.
How can I procure one of these fuchsia pills?
Well, it's very hard. They make them here in Austria.
I see.
But it's really wonderful. You know, I was looking over Twitter when I popped the first one. It was great. Everyone was so upset about so many things. And I found I could care less. Even people I've known for years were oh so upset. And I thought, they need a fuchsia pill. It just won't bother them anymore.
You be tripping.
Well, I do have to say that the fuchsia pill accentuates reality in certain ways.
I don't know if I want to promote drugs on the show.
Oh, isn't everyone always saying how you need to be red pilled or blue pilled or black pilled?
Yeah, but that's a metaphor. You actually took a pill.
No, I took a peanut. Peanuts don't have hallucinogenic effects. You should know that.
I thought it was disguised as a peanut.
That was a metaphor.
Wow.
Now, do you feel better?
Yes.
That's good, because, you know, if you didn't, I wouldn't care. It's really wonderful. I feel so free.
So you like everything, but you don't care about anything.
Well, let's just say there was an old phrase in England after World War II. I'm all right, Jack. Which really meant the rest of the world can fry. And you know, when you've been fuchsia pilled like this, it just isn't difficult anymore. However, there is an antidote.
What's the antidote?
For what?
Oh, never mind.
For the fuchsia pill?
Yeah.
Well, if I told you, you could get me out of it like that.
Okay, what antidote were you referring to?
The antidote to the fuchsia pill.
Okay.
It's very simple. You just have to remind someone who's taken one of where their money's coming from. And then very suddenly they care again. It's very peculiar.
Where their money is coming from?
Well, yes. For instance, let's say you've had a commentator who's known for being pithy, not to say waggish. And he's taken the fuchsia pill, so his commentary no longer has the zip and the bite that his audience have come to expect. Well, the easy way is to throw the antidote, which is, you know, you're not really being paid to be blasé. And then the person will be back. It's the same if he's a shoemaker. Under the influence of the fuchsia pill, he might say, I don't care if your feet get gangrene. And you say, yes, but you're able to pay your bills by my paying you for shoes. So I'd suggest you make me a new pair. And it's amazing how quickly the shoemaker is cured of the effect of the fuchsia pill. It's very strange.
All right, Charles, people don't pay you to take fuchsia pills and act whacked out like this.
Righto, Chief. What are we up to?
All right. That was actually pretty cool.
Well, I told you it was in the antidote. It works just like that.
All right.
See, when someone's on a fuchsia pill, you just have to remind him where his bread is buttered, and then, and then everything's back in the clear focus.
All right. Very good. Okay, a couple updates because people have been asking me about my mom. She had surgery on Tuesday. It was 8 hours long. It was incredibly complicated. I got lost even with the doctor telling me what he did. But she ended up coming out of it, quote unquote, very good. And she's so she's still in recovery. They just moved her to rehab today, on Saturday, and she's still very nauseous because morphine and the painkillers, and she hasn't, she's just barely got off of clear foods like Jell-O. So it's still rough, but they're doing rehab with her, therapy. But I'm just glad she got through it. Okay. But it's still rough for her. So, thank you for everyone for all the prayers and all the inquiries. Oh man, that really touches me. And I just kind of want to segue this into, I don't know, when you have trauma in your life and you come through it, you just have such feelings of gratitude. And my feeling here is I'm just so especially grateful to surgeons, especially in the United States. Everything. We always complain about how everything's decaying, but we're so lucky to have the surgeons we do. In my particular life with my dad, I mean, he had like a quintuple bypass in the 90s. 25 years ago. And he retired early, and everyone was really worried about his health, and he had subsequent surgeries. I mean, we're talking of stuff like, calcified heart valve, and they had to replace it and put in a pig valve. They had a different surgery where they had to go into his heart and do stuff, but they went through the vein in his leg. All sorts of, and a couple more, just the most exotic sort of things. And for him to live to 90 is really a credit to all the surgeons that worked on him. And if you think about it, I'm sure there are other people in the audience. I mean, these surgeons are life-changing. I mean, if I don't have I have my dad for the 25 extra years because of surgeons. So I'm just so grateful. I'm just so grateful.
Well, it's very true. I mean, I had the same thing with my dad. He also had a porcine valve put in 1980, when it was very, primitive stuff. He died in 1996, but I had him 16 years more than I would have.
Yeah.
And my mom, she never recovered from her fall, but she lived 8 months afterwards. Of course, Brother Leonard Mary was a little walking monument to medicine.
Yeah.
There is one thing, though, you're going to have to do for your mother when she's well enough to be joked with.
What?
I did this with both my parents. I did it with brother. But you got to do it when they're feeling good, but still in rehab.
What?
I'm so ashamed, my mother, father, etc. In rehab. It's come to this. Well, rehab is usually thought of as rehab from drugs or alcohol.
Oh.
I don't know what to tell people, Mother. You're in rehab.
Wow.
But you got to wait till she's feeling good enough to laugh.
Definitely. Okay, I'll save that one for later this week, hopefully.
Yeah, please God. She... I'll tell you, your mother, of course, has been a great repository of Eastern Slovakian, to the point of almost Carpato-Russian traditions.
Yes. Um, yes. Okay. So questions. We are gonna have a lot of more Magyar questions at the later half of this episode. So that's something to be excited about. What else we got? We've got um, questions on tradition, heritage, and just how to deal with people. So pretty cool episode we got coming our
All
way.
right, let's do it.
All right. First question from Yokobo. I just wanted to ask, as a man with a dark Panamanian mother and a white Midwestern father, and lives in the Midwest, what culture should I adapt? I try to live by the precepts of the Catholic Church every day. However, I am told for the last 15 years that the future of this area will be, quote, white identitarian. And I don't think I have a place in that future, and I worry. What is your opinion on this?
I wouldn't worry too much. Firstly, I know how you feel because I come from a similarly mixed background. My dad was French Canadian. My mother, of course, was Anglo, um, which, I certainly identified more with my father's people than my mother's, but I'm very proud of my mother's people. Um, Even though I don't really feel, I feel connected to them, and certainly there are qualities from them I have. But you see, it's not like you're half and half or divided into pieces. The Japanese fellow who wrote Remains of the Day, whose name I can't remember, but who was raised in England speaking Japanese, he made the point that human beings really are not divvied up like that. They're not divvied up like that uh, into bits and pieces. Rather, the different things that went into making them are part of a coherent whole. I mean, take yourself for an example. All right, you're half Italian, you're a quarter Magyar, and a quarter Slovak slash Carpato-Rusyn. Um, that is what you are. That's what's made you up. It's a kind of a unique identity. But you're not simply half Italian, a quarter this, a quarter that. You're a mixture of those things, and from that mixture is the unique combination that is you. Well, so too for Jacobo. Uh, Panama has a very old, long, and proud history, longer than most of the United States. Um, it was settled in 1539, so, you know, St. Augustine only got settled by the Spanish in 1565, so bear that in mind. But the Midwest has a series of traditions all their own, and if his father was German or Swedish or Czech or whatever it might be in his part of the Midwest, that too is part of him. Now, as far as the whole identitarian thing goes, well, we can't tell what's in the future. We really can't. I mean, as I've often said here before now, maybe 3 or 4 times, the tarot cards aren't much more help than the fortune cookies. So I'm afraid you're not going to find the future that way. All you can really do to shape the future is make the present as good as you can. So you know what? Be the kind of individual people want to be around and people look up to. And that will stand you in fairly good stead, usually, in almost any situation. Get to know your neighbors, understand them to the degree you can, accept them. And maybe they're right. Maybe in 50 years they'll take a look at your color and say, "You got to get out of here, boy." But maybe not. Who knows? It could very well be that your shared values, especially if you're pitted against outsiders who do not share them, will be more than enough to tide you over. It certainly happens. So don't worry about things you can't help. Worry about things you can. And be proud of both halves that your parents gave you.
Hmm.
My one point here, too, is I'll mention Archduke, well, then Emperor Karl. simply because I always like to say he is the patron of of many things, but one of them is children from difficult marriages, because he was one himself. Uh, his parents were very ill-suited. I don't know if your parents get on well or not. I have no way of telling. But whether they do or they don't, Carl's parents were very ill-suited for each other. But not only did he stay on good terms with both of them, he got the best from each of them. He got his mother's piety without her dourness, his father's charm and humor and all that without his promiscuity. And that's what you have to do. You pick and choose. When you come from a mixed background, you pick and choose the best of both, you know?
And yeah, you say pick and choose, but I think it happens more naturally and organically. Like thinking about how I regard my dad now, a year and a half after his death, I I wouldn't say I'm picking and choosing, but you aspire to be all of his good qualities, and
Yeah,
you totally forget all his defects. And I feel like that's a natural
yeah,
byproduct of loving the man.
yeah, yeah. I mean, when you love someone, it's almost the reverse of what Mark Antony said about Caesar.
Hmm. What do you say about Caesar?
The evil men do lives after them, the good is often interred with their bones.
Hmm.
But actually, when you love someone, you do your best to see that the good they did lives after them, and the evil is interred with their bones.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
that, so be of good cheer, Jacobo, be of good cheer. And, the whole racial thing is an unfortunate part of America's heritage because of its history. Um, it is they say that the two things that define Americans as separate from Europeans are race and space. I don't mean outer space, I mean the size of the country. And there's a certain amount of truth to it. But, be of good cheer, be proud of both sides. Thank God you descend from a Midwestern father and a Panamanian mother. Be proud.
All right. A question from Brandon.
Okay?
Greetings to the fount of knowledge, Charles Coulombe, and his interlocutor and Vox Populi, Vincent Franchini.
That's you.
I have a question about the history of the traditional movement that I'm hoping that Charles will be willing and able to answer. And to forestall any potential shenanigans about Charles saying that he's able to answer without commenting further, please do so.
Somebody's been watching the show.
That's for sure. He's a patron. He doesn't mess around. All right.
All right. That's fine. I don't care. You want an answer? I'll give it to you. I don't care. Maybe I should get another Fuchsia-Pilled before I answer this one.
As a Catholic born after the consecrations by Archbishop Lefebvre, and only really having embraced traditional Catholicism in the past decade or so, the story of the traditional movement as I first encountered it was always centered on the Archbishop and the SSPX. However, in the past year, I have been reading more on the topic and have realized that they are only one part of the story of the traditional movement, though certainly the most prominent. Especially as after the consecrations, the Vatican directed things based on the SSPX. I'm hoping that as Charles has a longer tenure in the traditional world, he can shed some light on other figures in the early days of the movement, and if he knows of anywhere to read further on this topic. Thank you both for all the information and commentary you have shared over the years.
Well, that's a tough order, but I'll do my best. Before Archbishop Lefebvre came along, there were a number of people in different parts of the Catholic world who realized that there was something wrong. The first in America, if not the world, was a Belgian priest who was out in Westbury, Long Island, called Father Gomard de Paul. And he founded something called the Catholic Traditionalist Movement. There was a group that started in Monroe, Connecticut, called the Orthodox Roman Catholic Movement. And they ended up having chapels all over the country. all independent priests who, cooperated basically at will, because there was no hierarchy for trads. There was a Dutch priest in the Low Country, I forget his name, but the name of his organization that goes back to 65 or 66 was the Dogmatische Unie, the Dogmatic Union. In France, there was the Abbé de Nantes. So there were a number of these people scattered around. Father Grasset and Mainvier down in Latin America and Argentina and Chile and so on. You had the Bishop of Campos, Brazil, was and there was lay reaction as well. The foundation of Triumph magazine in 1968, which featured people like Gary Potter, Fritz Wilhelmsen, Thomas Molnar, Farley Clinton, a lot of other people. They sounded the alarm. And then there were, well, there was a newspaper called The Wanderer, still is. It was a family-run organization by the Matt family, Alphonse and Walter. And they split, two brothers. And Walter would have nothing to do with the new changes, and he founded a newspaper that's still called The Remnant. Whereas contrary-wise, his brother, Al, he was a conservative, so he accepted the new Mass if it was said properly. Said there's nothing wrong with the council, it's just the way it's been applied. And that was the Wanderer's position and remains so. And for a long time, and people don't remember this, but for a long time, the Wanderer sometimes even explicitly said that if you desired a Tridentine Mass, you were actually schismatic-minded.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Catholics United for the Faith used to say the same thing. There's a book by Phil Lakutis, or not Phil, Jim Lakutis, called The Pope, the Mass, and the Council, which makes that very argument.
Wait, people who died for the faith said the same thing, that you're schismatic if you desire the TLM?
No one said that. Who's died for the faith?
So I'm sorry, I didn't catch what you said. I must have misheard you. In terms of other people.
Saying, the Catholics United for the Faith was an organization.
Oh, Catholics United for the Faith. Oh, okay. For some reason, I heard Catholics who died for the faith.
For the faith. No,
Catholics United for the Faith.
Catholics United for the Faith. And there were a lot of legendary priests who refused to change. Father Paul Wickens in New Jersey comes to mind. Keep the Faith in New Jersey. Father Oswald Baker in Norfolk, in England, down on Market. And some of these early people, Hutton Gibson was the founder of the Latin Mass Society in Australia. And of course, in England, the Latin Mass Society started, and they were able to get a bunch of non-Catholics to appeal to the Pope to allow the Old Mass to be continued to be said in England. And because Agatha Christie was in on it, Paul VI, who was a great fan, went along with the deal. But it was a very difficult time. And so Archbishop Lefebvre was one of an awful lot of people. There was an English priest in Normandy who had like 3 or 4 parishes he did, and he just did the traditional Mass. And the Bishop of Evreux, in whose diocese he was, left him alone because the alternative was to get someone to do as much work as he did. So he wasn't going to do that. And it was a very difficult thing because you'd have all sorts of independent priests who just wouldn't go along to a greater or lesser degree. You had conservative folk. Stephen Orez in Fresno had the Apostolate of Christian Action, which put out a lot of really good devotional stuff, but also maintained that if you wanted the Tridentine Mass, you were schismatic. So this was a very unpleasant time. It really was. And I'm talking about now the mid 60s through 1985 is the period. And of course, in 1976, Lefebvre was suspended for refusing to say the new Mass or to allow his order, which had been canonically erected, to offer it. His order's suppression, canonically, was done non-canonically, as was his suspension. He appealed to the highest court in the church, the Rota, and the Cardinal Secretary of State, Cardinal Viau, forbade the Rota to hear the case. Now that's ultra vires.
Yeah, big time.
He has no right to do that.
Yeah.
But of course, it colored his relationship with Rome ever since, or ever after, because if you're gonna be that dishonest, how could you be trusted?
Yeah.
If you're obviously using canon law the way Al Capone used the civil law in Chicago, nobody's going to believe you. They're going to think you're a worthless scumbag liar. This is a problem the present Holy Father is facing, a credibility gap. And of course, it doesn't help if you surround yourself with pervs and criminals. It does look bad. I wouldn't do it if I was trying to preserve my image. But at any rate, that was the way things frittered along. The Lefebvre and the Society grew. They had a sedevacantist schism in the 78, 79. That was the origin of the Society of St. Pius V, which got themselves ordained by the Took line, I believe. The original Orthodox Roman Catholic movement chapel in Monroe, Connecticut, I think is actually in the hands of, is now sedevacantist. A lot of people who were in at the very beginning eventually became sedevacantists, though by no means all. And you can see why. They got tired, You keep on exerting your utmost to defend the faith to the best of your ability, and so far as you can tell, your efforts bear no fruit. But as a good friend of mine always said at that time, sedevacantism is wishful thinking.
I forgot why.
Well, it's kind of obvious. A pope who apparently works against the good of the faith is far more annoying than the idea that there is no pope. I mean, you got to remember that in the 50s, a lot of people thought the pope was almost the Oracle of Delphi and our direct link with God in a conscious manner. And when popes behave in a fashion that...
Yeah, a lot of people can't handle that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we have the same problem under the current pontificate. But you know what's funny? I'm actually much less upset, and it's not because of the Fuchsia-Pilled either. I'm actually much less upset, although in some ways he's more radical, in the current pontificate than I was under Paul VI.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I've thought about it, and I think it's severalfold. One, it was really cold turkey going from the old church to the new. And if you didn't like it, it was just an outrage. And it made you very angry and very upset because you felt like you felt betrayed by your father. It was like older trads are like adults, abused children who become adults. But with this guy, well, I lived through the changes, And usually you would have, of course, the older priests were doing what their bishops told them. They were only following orders, as similar people said at Nuremberg during the trials. But what? It's everyone knows that's a morally admissible thing to say. I was only following orders. It worked at Nuremberg. Anyhow, it should work for the bishops. But the thing was that these horrible things would be done by, put in charge by, the seemingly omnipresent Vatican II priests, who were younger guys, who prided themselves on breaking up past patterns. And they were nasty and stupid and foolish. They were this side of incoherent. Their explanations were meaningless. It was all about, I'm in charge and you're not, worm boy, eat it. Well, that was the way they were when they were young. There was a period of adult supervision under John Paul II and Benedict XVI. And now they're back in the saddle, only they're a lot older. But they're exactly as I remember them from my childhood, except old. As is true of my generation in general, they got old without ever growing up. And their explanations still make no sense. And it's still whatever they say because they say. The same spirit that had Cardinal Villot forbid the Rota to hear the case. I'm in charge. I run the show. You do as you're told because you exist to obey me. Well, the problem, however, for that generation now is that we're not living in 1966 or 67 or 68, where they were still trading off the capital of their predecessors. And people still held the priesthood and the episcopate in great reverence. Now, if they tell us to put our underwear on top of our heads again, the reaction will be suboptimal. And it will not be financially rewarding.
All right. We're all about that financial reward.
I don't know about us, but they are. Where have all the flowers gone? Long time passing. I'm singing this for the current clerical leadership. Where have all the flowers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the flowers gone? Gone to graveyards, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? That and the times they are changing is my special message for the clerics of that generation.
All right. Your old world is rapidly aging. Get out of the new one if you can't lend a hand, for the times they are changing. That's my favorite lyric of that, and I would tell modernists that one.
That's right. That's right. For your sons and your daughters are beyond your command.
Yeah, that's good.
But why do they want a Latin Mass? Because you're stupid and old.
Now.
What? There's nothing wrong with being stupid and old. I've been trading off it on my...
All right, let's move on, but I'm glad your blood is up.
My blood is up. I'm afraid every drop of the Fuchsia-Pilled has been flushed out of my veins.
That's for sure. Okay, question from Zane. He says, Question for Charles and Vincent, the mental hygiene czar.
That's you.
How should Catholics deal with friends who are critical of Catholicism and sometimes make jabs at it, even if they're just joking? I used to get mad and argue with them, but now I just ignore it. Am I doing a disservice to the church by not defending the one true faith?
I would make fun of whatever they find sacred. I mean, there's something they find sacred. It might be President Lincoln. It might be the Gettysburg Address. But whatever it is, make fun of it. And when they complain, oh, but you know how you make fun of what I find sacred. Now, of course, if they're agnostic, then you get to laugh at them for being proud of being ignorant.
Like how? Like, how do you do that?
Well, it's very simple. If you know a person is agnostic and they express any desire for anything, oh, why do we even say that? If there's no God, it's not going to happen. Leave it alone. Accept what comes your way. Or why that's terrible that that's happening. Well, why is it terrible? There's no God to judge. So what's wrong with it?
Yeah.
I mean, the sad truth of the matter is, there's an old saying that what's good for the goose is good for the gander. But the truth is, nobody is like that. We like to push, but we don't like to be pushed. And, again, when someone makes a big deal about being agnostic, and I don't know, well, I wouldn't boast about being ignorant if I were you. I mean, what if I couldn't read and I told everybody, I'm illiterate? And that incidentally is kind of a funny truth. Do you know, if you tell people you're no good at math, and I'm not, everyone will nod sympathetically. If you tell them you're illiterate, they want to get out of the room.
That's very true.
Yeah. So the funny things about human nature. So basically, you've got to get it across to them that when they boast about being agnostic, it's like boasting about being illiterate. Which is fine. I mean, it's just that they mustn't expect any kind of kudos for saying that they don't know anything.
The difference is there's money in being literate. There's no money in various...
Being agnostic? Ha! Obviously, you've never worked in the film industry.
Okay, actually, yeah. Never mind. All right. Lot of questions from Bronislav.
Bronislav. Here I feel an Eastern European brother calling to me across the high Tatras, across the Carpathian Mountains, here in this moon-haunted valley in which I live, in the dark castle in whose chamber I dwell. I am here, Bronislav, to speak with you in my phony, incredibly awful Eastern European accent that is so bad it is made to do duty for Slav, Magyar, and Russian alike. So it's none of them at all. It is what you call Hollywood vampire film accent.
Someone actually said that to you, didn't they?
Yeah.
Because you were talking like that in Europe.
Yeah, they said you sound like you stepped out of a 1930s vampire movie. I said, well, where do you think I learned this? Indeed. Home? I have no home. The jungle is my home. Hunted, despised, living like an animal. But I will show the world that I can be its master. I shall create my own race of atomic supermen who will conquer the world.
Thank you, Bela Lugosi.
Indeed. Bride of the Monster in 1956.
All right.
You should pronounce that Lugosi.
Lugosi?
No, Lugosi.
Lugosi. Okay.
Lugosi.
Interesting.
He is from Bela from Lugos. It's not his real name either. But he was from the town of Lugos. So he called himself Bela Lugosi. But you see, in America, they cannot pronounce his names the way they do in the old country. So they called him Bela Lugosi.
I see. All right, so Bronislav says, Dear Vincent and Charles, first of all, thank you for the last episode. As a Slovak longing for Slovakia to come under the Holy Crown and embrace its history, with the goods and the bads, instead of ditching it and many people still having animosities toward Magyars, the address to Hungarian monarchists at the end of the episode moved me to tears, as well as the part where Blessed Charles was dying in the book. I hope there would be more people like you in mainstream media in Slovakia. A recent interview with Mr. Orban by Slovak newspaper stirred some good vibes, I think. Also some bad vibes in some people. However, to the questions, I need to do a prelude. Through the channel of Mr. Matt Frad, I stumbled upon his interview with Mr. Jacob Imam, running the think tank called New Polity, where they talk about necessity of the community and about finances, which for now in the videos is their main focus. And I found out that your beloved Knights of Columbus are either investing in or supporting in other ways the credit card company running on usury, their insane rates when one misses the payment. And I'd like to ask your opinion on this. I understand that the chivalric aspect of the Knights is very important and dear to you. However, do you not think that you should either try to change the support of the companies that are doing immoral stuff or leave?
Well, that's a very, very good question. And the answer is a complicated one. Firstly, in the Knights of Columbus, policy is never determined by national policy. Supreme policy is never determined by the membership. If it were, then they would not have been able to get rid of the fourth degree uniform or the secrecy, not secrecy, but the confidentiality of the second and third degrees and first. But they did all this because Supreme can do whatever it likes. In terms of its investments, that's also a very difficult question because honestly, I don't know what they invest in. I do know that Catholic entities as a whole tend not to really care too much what they invest in as long as they get some money. For instance, the Holy See investing in Elton John's biopic. I would not have considered this to be a good thing. But then the Holy Father never consults me on these matters. In fact, the Holy Father never consults me. Then again, I don't pay him a salary, so he doesn't have to. But where are we going with this? The thing about the Knights of Columbus is that it does do a lot of good work on a local level. But I really am wondering how long I can stay a member. And we'll see. I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. It's a matter of prudence, of prudential judgment. My home council in Alhambra, California, does a lot of good work, which I'm not there to help with. It's a tough call. It's like the Boy Scouts.
I'm remembering the saying of an old man, a wise old man, who said, if you subtract, you have to add.
Oh.
For me, I want to help with adoration. I want to increase popularity of adoration. I want to do corporal works of mercy with other people. So for people who are saying you should, at these parishes, at the local parishes that I'm at, okay. So for people who are saying don't leave the Knights, well, I want to do these things, and to me, this is an opportunity that is afforded to me in the Knights.
Well, that's certainly true. I mean, you do get, through the Knights of Columbus on the local level, you do get the chance to engage in the spiritual and corporal works of mercy in a way that is almost unique in modern Catholic Church life.
So I don't see another way to do these things, you know?
Yeah, and of course, there's also the old saying, never let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Now, it may be that at some point the bad will outweigh the good, but I don't know that we're there yet.
All right. I believe that big part of social change must come from the bottom. So, for example, rich Catholics should become benefactors for the stuff that can bring back Catholic culture. For example, churches or monasteries, beautiful ones, of course. Do you think that the true monastic spirit of withdrawing from the world, and not monks engaging media, is essential to the renewal of the societal order circumscribed by St. Thomas Aquinas?
Well, the problem you're faced with is where we are. I mean, firstly, don't think that the true monastic spirit precluded missionary work. If it did, St. Gregory the Great would never have sent St. Augustine of Canterbury with a bunch of monks from his own monastery to England. And St. Boniface would never have gone to convert the Frisians. He was another Benedictine. And the Germans, and those funny people over there. St. Cyril and Methodius had been monks in Constantinople before they went out to evangelize the Slavs. So it's dicey. The real question is, if they're going to do media, it would seem to me the real question is, how evangelistic is it? In other words, if it's just to give a nice message, the Catholics are nice, you be nice too, then I'd agree 100% with you, because that certainly was not part of monasticism. But if it's truly evangelistic, that's a different story. And then again, also you come back to the question of the good and the good and the perfect. The wealthy should support Catholic efforts, but the sad thing is they often don't, even if they're Kennedys.
Right. Connected to my last question, I regard the American as well as European healthcare systems as not ideal. And as ideal, I regard it being run by the church, since the care of the sick should regard the church much. However, since today's medicine needs much dedication and attention, I believe that it would be much better if especially married women did not work as nurses or doctors. Do you think that with the renewal of the true monastic spirit, it would be possible that such monastic orders as Hospitallers, having professed knights, as well as dames, should increasingly take over the health care? In my opinion, health care personnel should be dedicated to prayer and care for the sick, and mothers to their children and families.
Well, I certainly agree with your opinion, but the problem is, how do we get from here to there? The orders have to regain that spirit. The nursing orders of nuns, who, like the teaching orders, were particularly hard hit by the insanity after Vatican II, are very much fewer than there were. The question, the devil is in the details. The question is, how do we get from here to there? And I don't know. I mean, obviously, in the immediate, people still have to be cared for. You proposed an admirable goal, but I don't know how to reach it.
Okay. Final, I guess, comment for this episode from him. He says it's regarding Christmas Eve's traditions. I mean food. Vary tremendously across regions in Slovakia. In my family, we have the oblatki. That's interesting. A little bit different spelling. We say oplatki. He says oblatki. But not dipped in honey. Honey is spread. Then there is no pea soup after babalki. Instead, we have very sour mushroom soup. The liquid is mostly just juice of sauerkraut, which you can also eat with a special cake, or Vianoka, the word coming from Vianos, Christmas. After that, there is fried fish, schnitzel style. Traditionally carp, although we have different fishes in our family. Oh, that's getting me flashbacks to our Christmas carp episode where you told me about the tradition of having the carp in the bathtub.
That's right.
And I told you about the joke about how to cook carp is you nail it on a board, put it in the oven, take it out of the oven, take the carp off the board, and then you eat the board.
I don't think you're a fan of carp.
I'm not a fan of carp. It's like, I mean, it's a junk fish of freshwater. To me, the equivalent is mackerel.
Oh, don't you start. You got a lot of nerve, buddy. Every bloody Friday, you put the employees through the horrors of eating mackerel.
It's not mackerel per se, though. It got dubbed mackerel unfairly.
I know it's not mackerel per se. It started life as whitefish. But I'll tell you what, a week of just being brought out again to sit under the heat lamp, and it darkens, and the flavor, shall we say, becomes more pungent.
Yeah.
Until by Friday night, it's mackerel. It wasn't more mackerel. It was more whitefish, tilapia. But, though, an important thing to remember about carp.
What?
Do you know what they are related to on the domestic scene?
Goldfish.
Yeah. You know what happens to the goldfish if you let him out somewhere where he doesn't get eaten, and he's got a mitigated, unlimited room to grow?
What? They're like koi. They turn huge.
Well, then they turn to carp.
Yeah. Well.
So
there you go.
The goldfish in the bowl at home dreams of being a Christmas carp swimming happily in your bathtub.
Okay, fair enough, Charles. Fair enough. Okay,
Fortunately, it doesn't think of what lies beyond the swimming in the bathtub.
Naturally, we don't like to think about that. Okay, so he says, after that, there's fried fish, schnitzel style, with potato salad. That is more or less the end of dinner. However, there is also a special soup, kapustnica, which also varies across regions a little. Last few years, we eat it either later in the evening or during the octave, as well as smoked klobasa. It's interesting. He spells it Klobasa. We do actually. I never mentioned that. We have kielbasa, and he says singular klobasi, being plural. Yeah, kielbasa, absolutely. We have that. Traditional sausage, which you also eat with the salad. It's very interesting how Central Europeans are so similar in some sense, but so diverse regionally. For us, no pierogi or halushki. That takes me back. I pronounced it actually wrong the Slavic way. I've been saying pierogi, but my grandma would always say pierogi. She would not say it with a G, a hard G. So thank you for saying that way, Branislav. That really takes me back. So for us, no pierogi or halushki on Christmas. However, we like to eat Christmas Eve food also during the octave, and New Year's Eve is the same dinner as Christmas Eve. So, thank you for sharing.
Thank you very much, Branislav. Do you think they listen to Guy Lombardo on New Year's Eve?
I don't think
live from the Waldorf Astoria.
You never know. I mean, you've got that who's your guy? Oh gosh, why am I drawing?
Clark?
No, the predictor of the future.
Criswell.
You've got the Criswell cult over there, so I don't see why. Maybe there's some Guy Lombardo cult over there as well. You don't know how these things transfer.
That could very well be. I mean, Branislav, I had to tell you, I had a very strange experience in your capital, Bratislava, also known as Pressburg, Poson, etc., Stade Wilson, etc. just thought I'd mention that. I had given a book signing, this was about 2009, and a group of young people took me out after the book signing. And first we went to eat at a place called the Slovak Restaurant. Then we went to drink at a pub that was called the Slovak Pub. Well, we had a long talk. We drank a lot. I was getting ready to finally go back to my hotel. And this one fellow says, Mr. Coulombe, you lived in Hollywood in the 1960s. I said, yes, I certainly did. Did you ever hear of a man named Criswell? He was our landlord. I knew him very well. Stayed another 3 hours.
Talking about Criswell the whole time? Wow.
They wanted to know. Well, Criswell took on a life of its own. His own, I should say. You remember the famous story with your brother who had gotten thoroughly sick of Criswell because it seemed wherever he and I would go, we'd run into somebody, even in Biloxi, Mississippi, we would run into somebody who knew Criswell. And your brother just got sick of him. He couldn't.
Yeah.
It couldn't have happened too soon for your brother at this point. Well, it so happened that the great Bob Dornan was going to be speaking at Santa Teresita. And your brother was keen on hearing Bob and me talk about politics.
Yeah.
So we get there, and your brother goes off to get coffee or something. And Dornan and I are chatting. I said, Mr. Dornan, everybody thinks of you as the congressman and all that, but I think of you as the tempo man. Tempo being an old 60s era talk show that he'd been the co-host with Roy Elwell, who was a liberal. He was the conservative. And they had a very good chemistry between them. And I had met Elwell many, many years after. I told him as much. So he said, well, that's amazing. You must have been living in L.A. in the 60s. Where were you? I said, in Hollywood, the old Criswell building. He says, Criswell? He was great. I had him on my show I don't know how many times. And we're off down Criswell Lane, right? So your brother's coming back, walking toward us, and I could see the look of anticipation on his face because he sees Dornan and me talking very.
He's excited. Yeah.
Yeah. And this look of anticipation on Steve's face, I will never, to the end of my days, forget. But he comes up close enough to hear Dornan, not me, Dornan, say, so Criswell says to me. And that look of anticipation on your brother's face turned to utter disgust. And he walked off.
It's not worth it.
He didn't want anything.
Because he loves Dornan. He absolutely loves Dornan, but just
I know he does.
Talking about Criswell, just
he didn't want anything to do with it. Include me out. He looked disgusted.
Oh man, I love that story.
No, me too.
All right, we're on a time limit tonight. So let's wrap it up, Charles. Any final thoughts?
Wait a minute. Did you say let's ramp it up?
Let's wrap it up.
You don't want to. You don't want to include the intensity.
No, let's dial it down a notch. Let's wind it up.
You want me to be Fuchsia-Pilled?
Yeah, that would be
Okay. Hold on.
Yeah, you feel laid back?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, see, it's really not whether you're happy or unhappy, joyful or sad. It doesn't really matter. What does matter is that you make a lot of book orders from Tumblr House, and that you as soon as you can while supplies last. Take advantage of the operators standing by. Send in now at this moment, and you'll get a slicer dicer with no extra cost. And for that matter, ladies and gentlemen, it's important to remember that this whole thing is void where prohibited. Sorry, no CODs. Not even if we like you. And of course, if you fail to send the money and I don't get paid as a result, I'm really not going to be happy. So there. I see. Gosh, you're really rushing past our non-Fuchsia-Pilled audience. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, remember, Corpus Christi is coming up next Thursday. If there's a procession around, get in on the deal.
Usually there is. We actually at Saint Therese last year, the priest even did it when it was just kind of even him. So I know.
You're likely to find it, and if you do, get in on the deal. As I say, join in. It's like the Rogation Days. As many processions as possible. Taking the faith out to the outdoors, even on Monday.
Absolutely.
Because you know why?
Because if it's Monday, it's off the menu.
But the soul you save
may be your own.
God bless you all, ladies and gentlemen. We shall see you next week. Happy Corpus Christi. Happy Memorial Day. And remember, the fuchsia pill you take now may be the crib death you suffer as a result.
See you next time, everyone.
God bless all.